Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And I'd like to present to you alternative for public transport in Auckland and elsewhere. So what we'll encounter in this presentation, a need for concentration, because I'm going to speak probably quite fast. We've got 35 slides to go through. We've got half an hour. Someone please let me know also when we come near half an hour to, because we want to have some question and answer sessions. So please concentrate. We'll write down if you've got any questions. There will be a lot of contradictory to intuition statements. Everything, however, is provable. Yes, and the need for truly open mind. That's absolutely necessary. So the topics are, well, transport related. Problems of city transportation, which we all know, but some things I hope will surprise you. Comprehensive solution to that problem, personal rapid transit. And the best of the PRTs, I'm going to not only suppose, but indicate and try to prove that it's PRT Mr. or Mr. PRT. And then we'll go to specifics, statistics and numbers from Auckland city transportation and plans, and how do they measure as opposed to the alternative solution, which we can do. Finally, comparisons and conclusions. So I'm Ollie Mikosza. I am principal owner and inventor of the Mr. PRT. And I am always forever amazed and enchanted with my great master, Einstein, who of course, apart from being supreme scientist, was a wise man. And some of his things are driving mottos for me. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Very few people intuitively agree with that. They think that knowledge, but actually knowledge you can acquire at university like this. Creativity, imagination, it's something not always learnable. And the other thing which relates actually to very well to the transport problems is that we can't solve problems using the same tools which created them. So in fact, making more of it, what currently is known, is not going to solve the problem which has been created by things as we know them. So this is just a preparation for this positive thinking, open-minded, and concentration. So I'd like to have a little joke that probably resembles very well the state of the transportation solutions. And actually, this is one of the creative ways to solve it. So it is not laughing at these guys. They are smiling. Just imagine, very creative, like a cardboard sort of MacGyver solution. Well, at least it's not raining over their heads, and he can take passengers on top and charge them money, probably. But we've got better things, actually, how to do it. Well, 6 reasons why existing transport systems don't work. Pictures like that on internet are millions, right? And we know them. Actually, Auckland is not so bad. But structural inefficiency. Why? Because it's a group transit. It's like trying to carry people by tankers. Tankers are good for oil from A to B, and not for people who are like ants going in all different directions. Exorbitant cost of development and operation. Population growth, increasing demand. In Europe, they've got a new project. They are asking people how to, in 20 years, solve a double population with half of the money and with triple the volume of traffic and public transport. It can't be done, period. Even the richest nations didn't do it till now, and they are not going to do it in the current mode, and pushing basically in the direction as they are now. Aging society is a big problem. Old people don't drive, they don't want to go by buses as well. Economical and ecological situations, disasters, floods, hurricanes, which we are going to experience more and more. So all of the public transport, as we know, in the Philippines, etc., is ground to a halt, in Florida as well. And ours also will grind to a halt in the hurricane conditions. But we will not grind to a halt just because something is flooded, and you'll see that later. So do we have to continue? Some of the things you probably didn't know. A few years ago, 11-day traffic jam, 110 kilometers. In Sao Paulo, 300-kilometer gridlock. We haven't seen it, so we don't really quite relate to it. But this is really what's going to be ahead of us. In EU, they will ban combustion engines. They'll have electric cars. They are going to remove the subsidies from public transport. So what will happen? It will come to a halt. If you don't subsidize public transport, it cannot be economical. prices already went up. That's why people drive cars. They are more expensive, but they are yours. Never mind the traffic accidents, etc., which costs actually billions of dollars every year. One would say rhetorical questions, but it's good to remind ourselves what are the problems that we are having. Is it actually better today to drive than 10, 20 years ago? I reckon it isn't. I actually had this bright idea in Silicon Valley 15 years ago, and today is worse, even though they've built twice as many freeways and sunk billions and billions of dollars. We can't afford the helicopter. Public transport is not fast, it's not direct. Coming here yesterday and today took me about an hour, 7 kilometers, 25-minute wait for bus. Didn't have to make even changes. If I had to, well, there was a program in TV3 a few months ago. They made experiment from how it takes about 2 hours to go by public transport in the morning to the city. So that's why people don't go. Well, eco car, fine, great. Electric cars, except they are still taking road space. They drive the same as a normal car. They are not going to solve the congestion problems. Of course, it costs more. People normally don't actually add up how much it costs, because probably that would put them very upset. And should we deny poorer nations? No, that's why China, now growing up, being middle class, etc., is draining resources from all around the world. But do we have a right to tell them we can drive, but you can't? What about Bangladesh when they come up out of the swamp currently in economic collapse into the middle level? So more cars, congestion, permanent traffic jams in cities, and massive resources and energy consumption. So is the world actually being able or going to be able to support such drain on resources? City transportation, is it efficient as we are told? Well, private cars, because that is city transportation, they only use quarter of carrying capacity, usually 1.5 person, 5% on the road, 95% parked, taking space. Public transport, well, is reusable, and it should be, but it's expensive, lengthy development time. What are we talking? The CRL, the tunnel, 7 years to dig, to make, 5 kilometers. But other cities, even if they do it fast, it is still a lengthy process of preparation and doing. And in the end, it's uncomfortable and slow and very inefficient. So, right, we all know that. Are Echo and Google cars a solution to congestion? Obviously, they are not. As I said before, you can drive yourself, but you're still going to take that space. In fact, if you send that car back to your home, it will create more congestion, because at least now people come in and they leave it in the parking spaces in the city. They don't create a reverse flow. So they are not going to solve traffic jams, which is, apart from pollution, the main problem of the cities. So when the pollution is solved by electric cars, the quality of life is still going to be miserable. Hydrogen, expensive, network problems. I mean, 200 atmosphere, this is just like a bomb, driving on the bomb. Electric, also expensive. Lithium batteries. There is not enough lithium mineral on the planet, actually, to make all of the batteries if all of the cars were running on lithium batteries. Just there isn't enough element. Never mind, the batteries are bloody unecological, because you've got to recycle them, and it's chemistry, and disposing of it, it's quite complex. Now, and look at this engine. You have one engine, now you've got a power control unit, which is as big as an engine. What complexity and additional problems and costs, and even manufacturing it, additional costs it creates. All right, we have been fed that bikes and public transport is energy efficient. It's not quite true. If we take, Americans have done these statistics, if cyclist is 1, rail is only 1.5, aircraft is coming next, cars are better than buses and trams. A metro is just about the worst. Why? Because it's got to start and stop every kilometer. And even cyclists, it's actually, I've read it, walking or cycling depends. If you eat meat, if you are not a vegetarian, then the cost of producing meat actually and adding it up in terms of energy costs is more than driving a Hummer, a petrol guzzler. Americans have worked it out. And Americans are master accountants. As we know, they do statistics and they analyze everything precisely, so I wouldn't be very surprised if there is truth in it. So the solution actually is PRT, because whatever else we have just run through is not a solution. I just as well might go back to horse transport. So personal rapid transit, it's a 50-year-old concept. And it's only in the last 10 years when processing power and sensors, automation elements, have come down in price basically to the bottom. It's cheaper to buy all kinds of electronic gear than potatoes. That's why it is now possible to make PRT systems. 50 years ago it wasn't, because of the control problems. So what does it consist of? Really, stops, guideways, and little pods that move between those offline stops. Stops are offline, like petrol stations by the freeway. Now, the infrastructure itself is actually flimsy. You know, a tube, something which is similar to lamppost, not much bigger, but not much. 10 meters up, 8 meters up, you can actually hang it on the bridge. It weighs less than a paint on the bridge, so it's not going to be a problem. Small and frequent stops. That's what they will look like, more or less, at least in our version, which we, of course, will change. This is an engineering type of thing. This is not a Pininfarina design, which we, of course, will have in due time. But we are talking about very small, 5, and you can put a lot of these stops because they are like shower cabins. You come and you bolt them to the ground. Of course, make a little foundation, but not a big one. And the vehicles themselves are small, automated. They are like a taxi. They are not meant to be shared with strangers. So that's why their travel is on demand, always available 24/7, no maintenance, no service periods. Travel directly from a destination, from a start to destination, wherever it is. There is no routing, no fixed routes that to go. Basically, as long as there is a network of guideways in the city, which normally covers all the main roads, and hundreds and thousands of stops. In fact, per kilometer, there will be at least 6 stops, so like every 300 meters. In fact, practically, it will be every 100 meters, because hotels, office buildings, universities will buy their own little stops to have it in the foyer so that people come and go directly, because it increases business. And the vehicles, as you have seen, there were a few hours and ultra, so they are just like a taxi. There's no driver. So, oops, no, sorry. So do we start it here? Is it playing video? Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, so that will sum it up what we have discussed. Of course, it will remove city pollution as well, because it's electric. By the way, didn't mention, they are powered not by batteries, but by a third rail, like trains, electric trains, trolley buses, etc. So you've got those little stops, nose to curb, so they are not blocking each other, they are not sequential, if anyone should break, which is unlikely. So here we are making a off-ramp stop, so you've got the main guideways going there. So the next vehicle, of course, we are not blocking it. So this is one of the elements of PRT, not just mine, but every PRT behaves in this way. Of course, when the doors open, we will probably not be looking at the grass. Now, that was a simplified version, not to clutter the picture, and another view, so that you make sure that you understand. Simple guideways, off-ramp stops, and pods. So really the crux of the matter, and the reason why they are suspended, is, as you've seen, the floor is always horizontal, no matter what angle of the guideway. So we can actually scale in the hilly cities, like Auckland, is no problem. Our competitive systems, like the ones you've seen before, and you will see later, cannot do it. They are like cars. They are running on rubber. And therefore, they cannot really do what we can do. So just a little reversal. Of course, being automatic, we know by now, it is safer than driving it by people. We've got military planes taking off, basically drones, everything is now going automatic. The only reason why pilots are still, unfortunately, as we know from recent few months ago events, are with us to assure people that they want to land. But if they don't want to land, then we've got a problem. It would be better to be automated. And of course, automation is cheap and much safer than human factor, as I've mentioned. So what does PRT offer? Reduced traffic congestion. The more people will take it, and why will they take it rather than their cars? Because it's, for example, safer, personal. You don't have to stress someone will, even if you don't make accident, someone will ram you, and you've got stress with a big or small accident. Comfort as a private car, but less stressful. We said that. Resistant to earthquakes, storms, snow, and flood. Well, if there is an earthquake, such a light structure, yes, it will get damaged. But it's not going from 10 kilometers, that only 10 meters. You may fall down, and this is still unlikely. Development, low cost, fast, non-invasive. Can be built actually without stopping the traffic road on the street, because you can replace the lampposts on the walkway. A profitable operation. Why? Because the cost of capital development, infrastructure, compared to the income from the public fare level of public transport usage, is exactly opposite of what's happening with current public transport. Because it's automated, little material. Let's imagine, per kilometer, if you were to take cost of concrete and steel, and this is how it was calculated, how it was proven by our competitors, it's actually cheap. It's absolutely cheap, and cost performance, therefore, it is inevitably profitable. Of course, access for young, old, and disabled is important. More ecological than current systems. Why? Because even energy is produced at the moment, but we are using it much less. Actually, the pod with 4 people can cruise at 50 kilometers using energy as a hairdryer, 1.5 kilowatt. We are budgeting 3 kilowatt for air conditioning, for driving 1.5. So what about safety to other modes of transport? Cars, terrible. The worst invention humanity ever made. Actually killed more people than World War II, which was about 60 million. So since invention in the last 100 years, they killed more than that. Bikes and motorbikes, even more dangerous. The only good thing and safe, reasonably safe, is aircraft, even though it's got 30,000 parts and flies 10 kilometers. Now, if that was, whenever I get criticized, oh, what happens if the thing falls down? I say, well, do you use lifts? Do you fly an aircraft? Well, that's what should get you worried, not something like this. Lifts, cars, roller coasters. Yes, we are like a roller coaster. There are no accidents practically on roller coasters unless someone wants to fall out, but they actually cannot. Once they are locked in, they can't, even if they want to commit suicide. Not there. So, and PRT is even safer than that, than the roller coaster. Fully automatic, no human errors, no collisions, cannot even have a head-on collision. At the worst, if it could happen, but it won't, from the back at the similar speed, which is not that great, 50 to 70 maximum, not too high. On average, carries 1.5 persons. It's not a good terrorist target. It's much better to throw a bomb in a bus than into something like that, 10 meters high. And has fewer movable parts than a motorbike. Just a bit more than the push bike, but a bit less than motorbike. So there is hardly anything to break. So is it realistic and self-sustaining? Absolutely, unquestionably. Why? Because Google, I mean, I knew it 10 years ago, others knew it, but now Google said a month ago that we need to have an eye towards PRT. Not much, but I reckon this is absolutely crucial, important statement, because Google has gone through this, that 10 years ago, everybody thought that they are crazy, want a self-driving car. It will take 50 years, 100 years, science fiction. Well, that science fiction is in 10 years. They used to say the same thing about PRT. Jetsons, science fiction. It isn't. It's reality. Totally feasible technically and economically. 3 are in operation commercially. Princeton University that I've mentioned yesterday, I made analysis and they are reviewing it every day. They've really made it big, like in American style. Well, if we do it, how about doing it for 16,000 kilometers in one go? The whole of state of New Jersey, 8 million people, New York, 16,000. If they did that using Ultra system, British one, which is about 5 times less capacity, not as performing, it's the first generation as ours, even at that time, it would actually cost 110 billion, which is only 1.5 times of what Auckland wants to spend on the infrastructure improvements. But it would replace, this is one of the crucial things, 50 to 90% of the cars and buses in the area of its operation. Because people would still have cars, but they wouldn't want to drive to work, to office, to a restaurant, to a cinema in a car, when they actually could have 100 meters or 200-meter walk to something which can bring them up and down quicker and safer, and would be self-financing and profitable in 10 years, even Ultra. Now, we are much more profitable than them. And this is the basic parameters. Ultra would have 9,000 stops on this network, so every kilometer or so, actually every mile. So not very many, which is strategic or mistake. We would have 50,000 on the same length of network. They would have 200,000, we would have 8 times more, 1.5 million vehicles. We could carry per hour 14 million trips on these 1.5 million vehicles. And we actually would take only 6% of its capacity. Huge, right? Now, that 110 billion, as I say, that's only the, so if we did 10,000 kilometers, that would cover all of cities in New Zealand, would cost actually what is the Auckland plan. We will see that in a moment, that they want to sink in a black hole, achieving nothing. So that's why Mr. is the best PRT solution, and PRT itself is a solution as opposed to current tramway, bus, metro, rail, etc. Why is Mr. the best? Because it's got the lightest infrastructure among all PRTs, it's got the highest transit capacity, it's least expensive development and operation. And this is the prototype. I've made a few years, my house went there. We put it was working prototype. Of course, it looks crude, and it is crude. But it was to prove what it looks like to investors. And we had investors. We are just about to start development of 20 kilometers. Unfortunately, now the rug was pulled from under our feet because the recession, the US house market and the world collapse, financial markets collapse, killed investors and us. Now, another little advantage, everything can be stopped. That's why we say we've got like a motto. We move when nothing else can, even in the water. That's a real thing for many cities in the world, real danger. Well, of course, very nice to go to the airport and come from the airport directly to the hotel, to the lobby of the hotel. So, what we offer for cities, investors, and partners? Well, initially, actually, we can just be a complementing. Nobody say we would replace all of Auckland transportation overnight. But we could make, if we had any thinking authorities, 10 kilometers initially, Britomart Newmarket, Britomart Ponsonby, via Queen Street. Fewer buses on those routes because that would take quite a lot of load. And then once people have seen that it really does work, like with the cars, they used to ride horses and they were laughing at cars. They had the guy with the flag running in front. But in the end, all this laughing, who laughs last, he laughs best. And what we offer to city authorities, new revenues, services, no upfront investment, reduced wear and tear on existing infrastructure. That's what we would not need in Auckland anymore, 60 billion for more roads, more freeways, etc. Because they wouldn't be wearing and tearing, not so many trucks, not so many buses. For investors, 3 to 5 years, return on investment, and 50-year concessions, like a freeway. You built a freeway toll gate, this is a better actually than toll gate. Corporate partners, suppliers, city workers, residents, all of the benefits that PRT would offer to all those various sectors and interests. Now let's talk about Auckland Integrated Transport Plan. I looked at that plan, I read it. And that's what it really says. 30 years, 60 billion, 2 billion a year. Right? Last year we've seen in buses 400 million a year we need to pay for public transport in addition. This is not even road improvement. 400 million a year for public transport, which is part of this 2 billion. Well, that comes to something like $1,500 for every Auckland citizen, including newborn babies and pensioners and people who don't work, right? So about 8,000 per household. Yeah, that's what it is. I don't think it is something, and we are told that this is not tax. Well, it is another additional tax. And what's best of it, in the plan themselves, they stayed. Even fully funded program is not able to keep ahead in 7 years' time with the growing traffic, freight as well. So that's what $2 billion in tax is going to give us. If Mr. was to replace all of the public transport in Auckland from current 65 million trips, which is only 2 to 3% of all trips, and this is actually even being on a conservative side, it's probably more like 1%. By car, 2 billion trips. And realistic Mr. could deliver 900 million trips per year, which is therefore removing 40% of the cars from the road. And how would it do it? I've made analysis of 2 scenarios, 1,500 kilometers and 500 kilometers, costing, we'll get it on the next slide, 15 billion, 5 billion, but actually that's the price of the 5 kilometer or 3 kilometer big hole they are going to drill from Britomart to for the railway. So interesting things in terms of passengers. 65 million or 70 as yesterday we've heard. So that's, if it was 2% of all trips, this would be 2%. Then we remove, we take 40% of estimated car trip conversions. Princeton University said it would be 50 to 90, so let's be conservative. And let's be even, once again, let's reduce this 40, let's make 70% or 40%. Anyway, we come down from 2 billion trips to the potential patronage of 900 million on a big network, 1,500 kilometers, to, we'll say, 450 million. And this is comparing it with this situation. So this or that, depending on the size of the network, so which is 6 to 12 times more than public transport is actually able to do. Instead of 2 billion subsidies, we would have either almost 1 billion or almost 2 billion profit, net profit, after capital expenditure and operating costs, plus unspecified but huge CO2 credits. Because if you take 40% cars off the road, not by any administrative, not forced people, but because people will prefer to drive it, then you can claim, and I don't know if this can be converted to money, but we are all hearing and talking about CO2 reduction. There is no other method to reduce CO2 to such an extent, even charging, like was yesterday suggested, charging for entry to Auckland. Well, it will be more money, but people will not drive less. We can see it whether it's Singapore or London. They still drive the same as before. So financially, we basically come down to this. I've got income, you've got capex, you've got total PRT income. This is really what it boils down to: 800 million or 1.8 billion profit instead of 2 billion loss. So yesterday we've heard that the public transportation in Auckland, right? This is 140 what they are planning, but 101, this is what they are seeing that will happen in 7 years. And they've got this 40 million gap. They don't know how to push, how to encourage people to get that 40 million extra users on public transport. This is really negligible, because for the same price, this green line is the cost of the railway link tunnel, which only is being built to accommodate, to create extra 10 million passengers per year. We've got currently 10 million passengers on the railway network. They reckon it will be another 10 million if they make that shortcut, which is very doubtful, but let it be. But the whole thing is basically like sneezing in a storm, makes no difference. And this is really, yes, that 900 was really the holy grail, and this is still very conservative, that 900 on the top. So other considerations which were mentioned yesterday, actually they become non-existent or irrelevant. Whether it's first-timers, explorers, or car addicts, well, that problem would not actually exist. No one would need to optimize planning trips across the network, which HACKAKL is doing today and tomorrow, and that will be doing all of the applications to help people move. That would be not necessary. Exploring city, no problem. Because yes, you can hop and go and stop, and you don't wait. It's another thing I didn't mention maybe clearly. in this system, vehicles are surplus. There are 3 to 4 times more vehicles in the network than average daily usage. What does it mean? That you come outside of peak time, and they always wait for you. You don't have to book anything, don't have to summon anything. And even at peak time, more or less every second person would wait 1 minute. So, all of these things was mentioned yesterday, being productive, comparing costs, and even ability to provide door-to-door. Well, no other public transport system ever will. You won't get a bus delivering you to your door. This system actually will, because it's already designed before even Google cars, 10 years ago when I designed it, and I put my first patent. I've already knew that the best thing will be to have the stops and vehicles which actually will drop a little like a cycle wheels and will go 20, 30 kilometers last mile to your door. Of course, we'll use the Google technology to navigate those vehicles, but to equip them that they transform from a suspended guideway system, they drop on the ground in a little stop, drop the wheels, and ride you home. We can do that, and this is designed actually to do it. What other systems we have? This is Ultra. This is predecessor of PRTs, a small group transit in West Virginia University of Morgantown. Vectus, that's a Korean system done in Sweden. It's railway-based. Now this is tire-based, like a car, golf cart. This is another golf cart-like self-driving vehicle, Dutch, which is now in Abu Dhabi. So this is running at Heathrow Airport. This is running in South Korea Nature Park as a commercial operation, small commercial, yes. They are not citywide systems, but they are fighting, like Ultra is, hopefully will get in India and third world countries. By the way, we've got 12 cities around the world which gave us permission to build. We've got 1.5 billion that we could build, but we cannot get going because we don't have 30 million to get ready for production. So, because everybody says, no, it's a science fiction. Who is everybody? Experts, authorities, and politicians. I'll come here, this is just comparison with us and Ultra and other. These are the first generation PRTs. We are like a second generation, and it shows basically in these numbers. So passengers per direction per hour, they can carry 1,200, we can carry 5-6 times more. Because we are faster, we can come closer. With the same number of people per pod, we basically can carry 5 times more. With other alternatives, well, here we've got heavy metro. Now this was done by the LLA consultancy from Hong Kong. They became converts to PRT, and they are actually giving those lectures at transport conferences. This was from Wollongong, I think, or Shanghai, sorry. This was from Shanghai in China in November last year. So this was their take. Basically, what does it confirm to is that in the best case, you are 10 times better than Ultra in terms of cost performance. So for the same number of dollars, we can carry 1,000 people. A heavy metro, 3 times less. The best comes as a tram, half. So from all of the economical perspectives, mechanical, technical, and functional, really there isn't anything better than this. Why bother? By being actually fighting with all of these forces of darkness against us, because we want to change the world for better. Yes, so I am a bit of a maniac, and I've often been referred to as such. Well, we'll see in the end if that's true or not. Hopefully not. What we can do, improving quality for billions of people. Well, 3 billion live at the moment in cities. In the next 10 years, it will be 4 billion, and so on. Of course, not all of them will ride it, but we are talking about a huge market. Now, Bill Gates, and all his good heart, etc., he is saving 700,000 people a year from malaria, trying to, where over 2 million people a year die from car accidents. So never mind from the stress and health and pollution problems in the cities that we don't know about. So we would provide huge benefits for the Mother Earth. We bring latest technology to public for cities and beyonds. Major social, ecological, and economical. Social, because people would travel more. Old people would travel more. The mothers with children would be able to go and travel more. At the moment, try to get a mother with 2 kids and a push pram to get on a bus. I think she will go on a car. if she has one. We get a patented invention, we've got management team, we really can make it happen. And it could all start in New Zealand. And I try to make this occasion to raise the public awareness and to start public discussion, because we really cannot count on authorities, experts, and politicians. We've tried that, and they are the last ones who will, they are not the leaders, they are followers. So what we only can do, and hope everybody after this presentation will be convinced a little bit, is, yes, let's get it in the open. I haven't heard yet, ever, a single credible argument which would shoot down any of the things I have said. Financially, economically, technically, functionally, not a single. So the truth is, people, have got this, oh, I don't believe it's going to work. It's not a matter of belief, it's a matter of arithmetic and engineering. So I would welcome, and I hope to have many more people and many skeptics, but if there are any here, I'll be more than happy to discuss, and afterwards as well. The objective is to get the transport system like that for Auckland. We could export it from here around the world. It actually would be much bigger than Zero, Orion, Fonterra, and anything else. Because we are talking about the global market, which is 2 to 3 trillion a year. That's much bigger actually than aircraft industry. It's more even than military. Much bigger than computer industry. And we've got everything that is required, except for 30 million. So we are just putting actually now a staged approach for floating a private investment opportunities to fund the pilot system in New Zealand. If we can do that, we actually have got, by the way, US investment funds which tell us we'll give you how many billions you want once you've got shovel-ready product, which you can go and install. And you've got 12 cities, we can install it. So we need that little link which is missing for the whole chain to start revving the engine. So that's about it. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
You've got a page on Facebook?
Yes, there is a page with Mr. PRT on Facebook, indeed. So if you look it up, actually, of course, on Google, you can Google it up, Mr. PRT, you'll get lots of references, and it's been sort of banged around, kicked around for a long time by all kinds of critics, but it's got a lot of supporters as well. And we had, a long time ago, even like a question on our website, if you had such a system, would you use it? Over 90% said yes. And I think most of people, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Of course, why would I not use something which is cheaper, faster, better, safer, gets me closer to and from, without stopping, without strangers?
Why 30 million? Seems awful high. It doesn't seem like a system that it has to be all or nothing. It sounds like a system that you could do in pieces, get the ROI from that piece, build out as needed.
No, that's a problem. It's not a computer you can build in a garage. Or a program. It requires certification, every bolt and nut, before it can be used for public. To actually get a new model of a car costs about 500 million. So 30 million to get entire system that is still much less than our competitors have spent on getting on that certification and production level. Because it's not just to build a 1 kilometer to work out which are the best screws and bolts and nuts and electric engine from Bosch or from Siemens, and which bearings you put, and do you do it from concrete poles or actually from steel, and is it tubular or truss. This is what is 10 million approximately for, to build it and to work out. Then you've got a few million actually to get it certified by, say, Lloyd's of London, to come and actually get everything, which also includes certification of ISO level for the production. You've got to prepare all of the blueprints to give to the car manufacturer, who actually will be doing the pods, and to the, say, Fletcher Construction, who will be doing the, and there's got to be all of the procedure, all of the job descriptions, all of the positions, all of the toolings. So this is where the 30 million is going for. And then the actual commercial rollout is about 10 million per kilometer, which is very conservative. It has been done and multiplied. The actual probably expected real market thing will be closer to 5, but we say 10. it's not going to be actually profit made on building, on brick and mortar. The profits will be made from usage, from cash flow. And those profits, because it's 10 million per kilometer, again, it's 1 billion per kilometer for the whole. Every metro dug underground is about 1 billion. No, it's not, about 200 or 300 million in Europe it costs to build a metro underground. Of course, overground it's about 70 to 100. But we've got capacity, directional capacity, smaller than metro, about 4 or 5 times smaller, but we are 20 times on average cheaper. So that's why for the actual cost benefit comes to us. Yes?
How much would it cost to travel on pods?
Yeah, it would be actually cheaper. I had one of the figures there expected it would be cheaper than current transit. It was like for a 500 kilometer network, it would be like $2.50 per ride on average, probably of a length of 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers ride on public network here is about $5, $4 to $5. So it's about half the price of current public transport costs. So imagine how much more actually people would travel. It's like with the cell phones. We started using cell phones for everything when the prices and everything dropped down. Before cell phones happened, nobody believed that, well, who needs a cell phone? Who needs a PC? Sorry.
How you doing? Yeah, it looks sustainable. That's the first thing. If the government were to subsidise it, take out money committed to new infrastructure on the roads and the railway system, do you think it's possible that PRT system could be free?
Well, if government was, well, someone would have to subsidize it for it to be free, but it would be much less subsidies required than for any current public transport system, indeed. As you've seen, this profit would come even from half of the fares currently charged by public transport, which has to be subsidized at least 30%. So for each dollar that someone pays for a ticket, the rest of us pays at least 30 cents, but probably more. I think that a lot of this data is just hidden and disappearing, but the truth is probably 1 to 1. So yes, there would be if government subsidizes, then the transport would be free. And I actually offered it to Auckland free of licenses. The transport people didn't even want to look at it.
Would you run it independently?
Yes, the idea later on is that we would run in those 12 cities. The arrangement there is they gave us concessions to build the system, to expand it. They won't give money, but they let us build it, which is great. That is the best model, because then the bureaucrats are not interfering, are not trying to to put the spanner in the works. But again, this is such an early stage that I would be more than happy, yes, to have the first city free of charge. Just take it, build it.
$30 million.
Yep.
Committed to the project.
Mm-hmm.
How many kilometers is that?
No, that is only 1 kilometer, and it's not commercially usable. It's like preparing a car for manufacture. You've got to basically make 20, drop them, hammer them, redo it, few iterations, and document everything how it's going to be built later, including quality control, because when you give it to some other cities and other contractors, you don't want the whole thing to collapse. So they've got to follow, like McDonald's. You get a franchise and you've got to build exactly as they have told you, everything. And some things they actually deliver to you. That would be the similar model. Sorry, yes?
How does HACKAKL find their way through the system? I presume there's some kind of rather impressive switching at a physical level and also at a navigational level. How autonomously things have those work?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite get it.
Sorry. How do these things physically find their way through the network? I assume that there is some very clever system switching points or intersections, and also there's information. Are these things autonomous? Are they finding their way through the network? Is there global control? Is that kind
Yep. Okay, physically the switching is done, that's one of the patents, that actually it almost jumps between two guideways. So it's like a blade going between two guideways, holds on to one, but actually grabs the other, lets go of this one like Tarzan, and basically that's how the switching is done. So nothing actually moves. Only within the vehicle itself, within the drive caddy, it moves, things are switching. In terms of the automation and IT, Yes, it's actually a multi-level distributed system. So the pods decide, do I go this way or do I go that way, depending on what is the weather forecast. In other words, prediction of the central system, like with airplanes. Well, too many have registered they are going to go this way, so the next bunch of pods going from Britomart to Newmarket will go via Simon Street rather than via Parnell.
And the pods have a rotator just in case.
What?
The pods have a rotator just in case.
That is an option, but I think not quite necessary, considering that in lifts we don't have rope ladders either.
I want a rotator.
You can bring your own work.
I've been on chair to the pole.
Right. No. So yes. So of course we've got contingency plans for situations where things get stuck, but the chances of it are is lower than lifts getting stuck.
Fair enough. I'll just tease it.
Right. Okay. I think we've got to finish.